Hello, everyone, and welcome to Schwab Coaching. My name is Cameron May. I'm a Senior Manager of Trading and Derivatives Education here at Schwab, and this is Getting Started with Thinkorswim. And the last time we met, we got into the chart settings tools that are available on Thinkorswim Charts that allow a trader to set up a chart just the way they like it. We got through the first three tabs. We talked through the general, the price axis, and the time axis tab. So this is going to be part two in that chart settings exploration series. We're going to be going through the next four tabs: favorite time frames, appearance, equities, and options. A lot of nifty features and tools available there for the customization of one's own chart setup. We're going to get into all of that in just a moment here, but before we do, let me first of all say hello to everybody that's already chatting in. Already a very lively, active chat session out there on YouTube. Hello there, Janelle and Will, Kevin, Bill, Life in the Fast Lane, Greg, Eva, everybody else. Thanks for joining us week after week. We always do appreciate your attendance and your contributions to these discussions. If you are here for the very first time, pardon me for just a moment. If you are here for the very first time, I want to welcome you as well. And if you're watching on the YouTube archive after the live stream is concluded, well, enjoy that recording, but be aware that you're invited to join us in the live discussion. This is a Wednesday webcast series, and we kick things off promptly at 2 Eastern time. If you'd like to be here, we'd love to have you here as a live stream audience member. I also want to let everyone know that my very good friend Brent Moores is going to be hanging out in the chats with us. He's going to be addressing any questions that I can't get to just during the flow of the presentation. Brent and I have now been working together for more than 20 years, so he brings a lot of experience to this. Thanks for having my back there, Brent. Brent and I would also like to issue an invitation to everybody listening. If you have an account on X, you should be following your favorite presenters from Schwab on X. You can find Brent there at Brent Moores CS. You can find me on X at Cameron May CS. But let's get right into this discussion. It's part two in our chart settings two-part series. But as we do, of course, we need to pause to consider the risks associated with trading and investing. Risks are real, so bear this important information in mind. All corporate or issuer names and market data shown are for illustrative purposes only and are not a recommendation, offer to sell, or a solicitation of an offer to buy any security. Options carry a high level of risk and are not suitable for all investors. Schwab does not recommend the use of technical analysis as a sole means of investment research, and investing involves risks, including the loss of principal. All right, so let's go. Well, let's just lay out an agenda. We're going to go right to the Thinkorswim platform, but yeah, today is part two in our series of exploring those chart settings on the Thinkorswim desktop platform. Now, I'm just going to be going really left to right, top to bottom, starting at the favorite time frames tab. And we'll just make our way through those next four tabs. I think there's going to be something new for just about everybody who's watching, even if you're a veteran user of Thinkorswim. Now, don't try to put the pressure on yourself to think that you're going to remember every single feature that I show here. Fortunately, this webcast is being recorded. It's scheduled to be added to our Thinkorswim, to our YouTube archives after the live stream is concluded. But let's get to the chart settings. So here we are on Thinkorswim desktop trading software platform. I'm going to go up to the chart settings. In our last presentation, we went through those first three tabs. If you weren't there, let me show you where you can find those. So first of all, if you haven't subscribed to our Trader Talks channel, please do that. This is where we house the playlists of previously concluded or delivered webcasts. So I can go to the playlists for this webcast series by clicking on playlists. This one happens to be tucked away right down at the bottom of all of our different webcast series. There's our Getting Started with Thinkorswim. If I click on View Full Playlist, you'll see right here the step-by-step guide to the chart settings tools on Thinkorswim Desktop, Part 1. You can find that right there. I'll also make sure to include a link to that in my video description after the webcast is posted. All right, but let's go acquaint ourselves with these next four tabs, starting with the favorite time frames. So this relates to these time frames that we can access right at the top of our chart. So if we want to switch from maybe a yearly chart to a shorter term chart, maybe a 5-day, 15-minute chart, you might wonder where do those time frames come from? Are they customizable? Absolutely they are. We learned before that we can customize them actually right from that time frame tab, but alternately, we can use this chart settings tab. the favorite time frames. So here's that default list. These are literally our favorite time frames. So our default is going to be this, starting with a 1 day, 1 minute, proceeding all the way through a 3-year weekly. But let's suppose that we wanted to add a longer time frame. Well, let's add a time frame by clicking on Add Time Frame. And let's say that our trader wanted maybe a very long-term view, possibly 20 years. Let's set that out to a monthly view, and we're going to add that to our list. So you'll notice that populates down here at the bottom of our list. Now, what it does not do, when we click Apply, you might think, oh, is that going to switch our chart to a 20-year time frame? No, what this is actually doing is it's applying this to that list of favorites. So the next time we access that up here at the top, there's that new time frame. All right. Now, what if we wanted a shorter term time frame? 1 day, 1 minute. One question I get fairly frequently is, Cameron, why can't I get tick charts on Thinkorswim? Of course, you can get tick charts on Thinkorswim. Let's add that as a default time frame. You'll notice there's a little radio button right here where we can select tick. Now, as I do that, I kind of went fairly quickly in adding that 20-year chart. So just to clarify, we select the length of the chart using the time interval menu. And then the aggregation period is a fancy term that we use for the word candle. That's what that is. So right now we're looking at daily candles. On my 20-year chart example, I used a monthly candle. All right. So now let's switch it over here to tick. And this defaults to a 1-day chart, but it literally goes tick by tick. Now we're going to go to that aggregation period again. And the default here is going to be each candle consists of 133 ticks, however long it takes for the stock to accrue 133 essentially trades. Each quote that comes through is what's considered a tick. Some stocks that are very active might get 133 ticks quite quickly and create a new candle. Others that are more slow might take longer to aggregate those 133 ticks, but maybe our trader likes to see this literally tick by tick on their chart. So I'm going to add that, a daily chart that's just going tick by tick. Let's add that. Now what that does, though, kind of counterintuitively, anything new that we add here as a new time frame, it positions it down here at the bottom. Now that was sort of chronologically correct for our 20-year chart, because it's the longest chart, and these are going in sort of ascending order of length. But this one's actually our shortest. So I may want to move this one up. Let's move that up. You can see as I click move up, it's just pulling it up from the bottom toward the top. And then I'm just going to click apply. And now that will be accessible in our list of favorite timeframes here. Now, finally, there may be, a desire by somebody to maybe take out one of these time frames that we don't use, or possibly remove a time frame that we've previously added. So how about we remove this tick chart? Let me just delete this. I'm going to delete our 20-year, and let's just click apply. And now if I were to go back, it would just sort of be back to that same standard. Now, a final note here in the add the time frame is we can select a range of time. Now, before I go into this one, let me explain why a trader might choose. Actually, let me see if I want to go into this deeply. Bear with me for just a moment here. Yeah, that's okay. I'm all right with that. Anyway, I do occasionally get the question. Let's go back up here to time frames. For a range, how can we choose a different aggregation period or time interval? Yes, we can do that here with our range. This is going to be quite similar to the other defaults or the other menus, just sort of a different layout. Anyway, so we can change, a chart time frame from a day all the way out to the maximum available. We can choose price ranges ranging from a single tick all the way up to a monthly display. So the range sort of covers everything. Now, there was one other thing that I wanted to show. Let me go back to time frame again. Custom is the one other thing I did want to show. because sometimes a trader will say, Cameron, I like to zoom in on a certain time frame on my chart, and then I wish it would stay on that zoom as I move from one chart to the next. Well, that's possible right here using custom. And I did want to sort of set a sort of a hypothetical backdrop for this sort of an approach. Let's suppose a trader wants to look at a series of stocks, but they want to look at those starting from maybe these lows since the S&P started its rally back here on April 7th. You'll notice that's when the S&P hit its low and then really started to rally. Well, this is where that custom time frame feature may come in handy. Let's go to that favorite time frames. Let's add a time frame, but this one's going to be custom from, let's say, April 7th. I believe that was April 7th, wasn't it? Yep, right there. To the present day. And our aggregation period, again, that's just our candle length. Let's say that we just wanted those to be daily candles. So now I can add that, and that's now going to be a chart that I can quickly access if I want to go through a series. How about I move this up just to get some repetition with that? That's about, 5 or 6 months worth of time frame. How about we snug it up right here, just above that 6 month or that 180-day view. Let's click apply and click OK. Now, if I go up here to my favorites, there's that just from the April chart, and I can go through a series of stocks. There's Apple, there's Microsoft, and you notice it's all starting from sort of that same start or anchor date. All right, let's clean this one back up. Let's go back up here. Let's go to our favorite time frames. And I'm going to delete this one. That was just as an example. Don't need that. Click apply, click OK. And we're done with the favorite time frames. Now, next up is the appearance. Now, this is really what a trader who likes to set up their chart to have a certain look. This is the tab that they're going to want to acquaint themselves with, literally the appearance of the chart. So let's see what some of these appearance features are, starting right up here at the top with the type of chart. Now, this is what we're seeing right now is what's known as a standard chart, and just showing candles. There are other chart types, monkey bars expanded, and seasonality. So if you're not familiar with these, let me just show you. If I select monkey bars, if I were to add that to my chart's going to look something like this. And I think what I need to do is dedicate a future webcast to just exactly what the monkey bars represent, how they might potentially be traded. But for some traders, they like that look. If I were to apply that to my chart, you'll notice we now see a very different chart. Same deal with monkey bars expanded. You can see that creates a very different chart. The seasonality chart, which we've actually used several times in recent webcasts. Let's click apply there. And that one looks very different again with the green year-to-date bar along with last year's performance right down here. And I'm going to switch this back to our standard chart and apply that. So now we're seeing our candles again. And within that standard chart, we have a number of different chart types. Now, Alex Markev says, is it possible to create an alert for a day before the ex-dividend day or a day before earnings? Yes, we can set an alert based on a given day. We might need to look it up and see when those things are going to happen. I don't know. I'd have to do some experimenting, Alex, to see if we could just say, just any time there's an approaching ex-dividend or earnings. I'd have to do a little bit more research to give you a complete answer on that. But good question. But there are different chart types that we can access right here. Obviously, right now we're looking at a candle chart, but we can also load up a bar chart. You can see we just switched to bars there. We can change this to what we call a candle trend chart and click apply. That looks almost like a candle chart, but the color schemes are a little bit different. If we switch to a Heikin Ashi chart, click apply, we get our Heikin Ashi candles, which again have sort of a surface resemblance to traditional candles, but their construction is very different. And for each one of these, if you're not familiar with these, let me make a suggestion for you. First of all, just a quick reminder, make sure that you're subscribed to our Trader Talks channel. But on our channel, you can do a search by key term for webcasts that support learning about specific things like, I wonder what in the world are these Heikin Ashi candles? Let me type in Heikin, hit enter on my keyboard, and what do you know? Trading stocks with Heikin Ashi candles. Who's this guy? You may want to just do a quick search if you have an interest in learning about these. Obviously, I'd love to explain each one as we go. Can't do it. Okay, so let's go back here. Let's switch this back to a bar candle. And what is this line width? Well, by default, we have a little line around the candles. For some traders, they have a preference for that to be a little bit thicker, a little bit more bold. Others like to be a little bit more muted. This is where that can be established. So let me just dial this up. And obviously, the higher we drive that number, the thicker those bars become. I've never actually experimented to see how thick one can go. Should we do it? Okay, looks like 15. That's the top end. Anyway, but and by the way, let's also make sure that we're looking at our candle bars. There we go. We'll switch that back. In any case, as we make that thicker, this is sort of your preview screen. So before we apply it to the chart, we can see the sort of impact we're about to have. So now if I've made this thicker and to click apply, you can see there, that's what it now looks like. All right, maybe I don't want that to be so thick anymore. Let's apply the thinner view again. Okay. Yeah, Alex, you said your question was about the day before. So yeah, Brenda's pointing out, okay, you can choose at the time of an event, but if you want to look the event up in advance, for example, even if we just create an expansion area on our chart and add the corporate events to the chart, which we learned in our part one. Should we do that? I don't mind. Let's quickly do it. So if we came to our chart settings, and if we went to equities and we selected show corporate actions, and if we go to the time axis and we gave it some extra bars off to the right, let's say 20 days. This is going to create some extra space out here to the right. Click apply and click OK. If you'll notice, this is now showing, hey, there's an earnings announcement out there on the 29th of October. And I could then set up, let's say, an alert for the 28th of October as basically a reminder. Okay. Or as Brent has pointed out, you can just set up an alert that just automatically generates according to the event itself. There are a couple of ways that you can do it that way. Anyway, so back to our chart settings. Let's just sort of set this back. Go. I'm going to maybe put on, now let's just set it right back to no expansion area. Just a nice clean chart. But back to our appearance, we can also change the appearance of the candles. So for example, we can set different colors for the border around the candles, for the up days or the down days. By default, it's going to be green border for an up day. It's going to be a red border for a down day. If we have a preference for a different color, we can choose from a default palette here, or get a much more detailed palette by clicking on more. I'm just going to leave those on their defaults, but just be aware that's available. Like for example, maybe I want blue. I don't really want blue, but that's what that would look like, right? I'm going to switch that back to its default. Doji candles, which are candles where there really wasn't much change in value on the stock from open to close, those by default are going to show as gray. So we can change those as well. We can check the box for fill up. And what this means is fill the candle body if there was an upward move during the day from open to close. So if I check this box for fill up, what it's going to do is change these white candles from just an empty white candle to a filled green candle, according to the border up color that I've selected. So let me check the box for that, and that gives me a preview of that impact. If I were to click apply, that's what we wind up with on our chart. I'm going to unfill that and just switch that back. All right, we can check or uncheck the fill down. I think you already get the point there. We can have empty red candles or filled red candles. And there's even the option to not show what's called the wicks of a candle. So we have the body of the candle, which is the rectangular area, and then the wick is the long stick poking out the top or the bottom, if I uncheck that box, it just eliminates the wicks. And for some traders, they see the open and the close is carrying heavier weight than, let's say, the high and the low, so they can just remove that if they consider that to be visual clutter. I'm going to leave that on there. Okay, now finally, down below, some additional customizations that we can make, and we can explore each of these customizations before we implement them. First of all, we can choose the color of the crosshairs that are being displayed as I'm moving around on my chart. So by default, it's going to be kind of a gray color. If I were to select, let's say, blue, and move around, now we have kind of a blue color. I'm going to switch that back to a gray. But some traders don't even need the crosshairs. So my personal preference is I like those crosshairs because I can align price with time. Just move that around, and I can see the intersection of those two elements of a lot of different trades. But for some traders, maybe they only need to see a horizontal line representing price levels, or maybe they just need to see what's going on from day to day using a vertical line, or maybe no preference at all. They just want to have their cursor on the chart. My preference is to have the cross, so I'm going to leave that on cross. Now, the Snap To feature, we got in a little bit of an introduction to in session number 1, but I don't have what's called a Snap To set on the chart right now. And the way that I can tell is because as I move around here in the preview field, you can see my lines are just following my cursor very smoothly. If I were to change this, let's say I change this Snap Crosshairs To, and I change that to Open, High, Low, Close, watch what happens as I start moving around on the preview. Do you see that sort of popping? It's literally snapping to the closest element of a candle, the open, the high, the low, or the close. So if I'm closest to the high, it'll pop up there to the high. If I'm closest to the open, it'll pop down to the open, the close, and then down to the low. That's what that Snap To does. And that carries over onto our charts. If I were to apply that and I start moving around over here, and let me just, let me apply my cursor here. There we go. As I move around, you can see that snapping around the chart. Some traders find that to be very helpful. Others might find it to be less helpful and maybe even distracting. So let's switch this back to just none. Okay. Now, Alex, you're asking, unfortunately, this isn't a webcast about alerts, so my apologies. I can't take too many questions that are off track. I'll have another dedicated webcast, or you can just go do a search for alerts, and you'll see some where we've explored that in good detail. I mean, you're asking legitimate questions. They're just not in keeping with what I had planned for this webcast, and unfortunately, that can lead to sort of a scattered learning experience for those who maybe find this after the fact on YouTube. In any case, we can color our volume bars. By default, volume bars, and right now my volume bars are not displayed on our charts. How do we add those? I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. If I go to equities and I show that volume subgraph, let's click apply and click OK. Now we see volume displayed below the price chart. But as I go back to our appearance, by default, this is shown as blue. Well, some traders like to see if the price went up on a given day, they prefer to see that day's volume colored as green. If price went down, they prefer to see that day's volume colored as red. So we can actually color as symbol ticks. So we have red bars for down days, green bars for up days. And what's this gray bar right here? Well, that was a day where open to close was pretty flat, also known as a doji. Okay, I'm going to set that back to our preset color. We could choose another color for the volume bars by clicking on the color itself and getting that same palette. I'm going to leave that on blue. But finally, we have this background and grid. So the background on my chart right now is showing white. So this is where we are at the moment. And then we have a grid showing different price levels. In mine, it's going in $20 increments, 480 to 500 to 520 to 540. So we have a horizontal line in that grid. We also have vertical lines at different at different price breakpoints, the start of each week in the case of this chart. But some traders prefer to maybe have a grid, but only a faint grid that doesn't appear very sharply. As a matter of fact, you probably have to squint to see my grid right now. We can change the color of that grid, maybe make it darker. You can see that appear in my preview area. As we click apply, you can see now a more prominent grid. Another thing we could do is if we don't want the grid at all, we can just uncheck that grid and apply. And then we just have a nice clean white chart. I'm going to put that grid back on. Let me go to my color palette and do a lighter grid. How about we do something sort of in between? Let's click OK. There we go. That's back to about the grid that I prefer. But finally, the background color can be changed here. So mine is white. We can click on, it's even difficult to see the box. When it's white, it's literally just white on white, so you can't even see that there's a box there. As I hover over it, there's that box. If I click on it, it gives me that palette. So for example, if I wanted a gray background, now I'd have a gray grid on a gray background. Might want to play with the grid color if I make this change. In any case, I can see that impact. I don't want that. So let's just switch that back to white. In any case, we just learned all about the sorts of different appearance changes that can be made on the settings, very customizable, just at someone's personal preferences. But we certainly have time. Let's make sure that we acquaint ourselves with the tools on the equities and the options tab. So let's move over here to equities. Starting right up here at the top, we can change how this last price is determined, or the price that's displayed on the chart tick by tick. By default, it's just going to be the last trading price. We could select also the bid or the ask, or what's known as the mark or the market price. With a heavily traded stock, there's not going to be a huge difference from one to the next in most cases. If it's illiquid, we'll see more prominent changes. But for something like Microsoft, if I were to say, let's change this to the bid price, right now you can see we're at 524.62. If I change that to the bid price and click apply, it's going to be maybe a penny or two of difference, usually a penny. In any case, I'm just going to leave that as the last default. We can adjust for dividends on a stock. This is something that I've discussed a number of times in my webcasts. Kadar, you like that? Karina says, how do we change the expiration date color? So by default, it's going to be red. So on options, oh, pardon me, it's on the time axis is what you're talking about, right? Yeah, show the expiration Friday. That one I don't believe is customizable, at least, yeah, I haven't stumbled across a customization for that. In any case, adjusting for dividends is this one. I might need to get a different stock to really hammer this one home. Let's customize a column here, and let's look for dividend yield. Okay, add that as a column. And I want to find the stocks with, let's say, the highest dividend yields. All right, so maybe a stock like, maybe ConAgra here, CAG. So CAG, over time, you'll notice if we were looking at this, especially if we look at this on, let's say, a 1-year chart, CAG has not had a great year. Stock has gone down. Now, contributing to that decline in price, sort of counterintuitively, are the dividends that are paid by ConAgra. So if I were to come up to my chart settings, skipping ahead a little bit, I'm going to go to equities, and I'm going to show things known as corporate actions. So these are actions that a corporation can take that can influence its stock price, like dividends or stock splits. So I'm going to show those corporate actions with little icons. So what we can see with this company is it pays a regular dividend, 35 cents, 35 cents, 35 cents, 35 cents. These are displayed as icons on what's known as the ex-dividend date for the stock. And what happens when a company pays a dividend? What happens to its share price on that day, on the day on which sort of the dividend comes into effect? It's known as the ex-dividend date. Well, the stock price is adjusted downward. And that sounds kind of weird. It sounds counterintuitive. Yep, but on the day that ConAgra goes ex-dividend, its share value is adjusted downward by 35 cents because it's literally writing off 35 cents of value from its books in order to distribute that 35 cents per share to all shareholders, to common shareholders. Yeah. So the value of the stock actually goes down and the price is adjusted down for that. Now, the shareholders actually got a value for that, but its net impact is that it makes the stock look worse. And they might say, that's not fair. I got value. It was paid to me. Well, if we want to see an adjustment for that value, that can be done here in the Equities tab. Right here where it says adjust for dividends. By default, the chart only builds back in the price when there's what's known as a special dividend, a great big unusual dividend, maybe a one-off that can cause a big gap down, and it can create this sort of artificial looking poor performance on the stock. But we can also choose to adjust for all dividends. That literally means, hey, show me how the stock has done, but also include the dividends that were paid. So if I click apply on my chart and click OK, you'll now notice it looks like the starting point of this line just shifted. I actually drew it from the start of from the very first candle of the year, but this is now reflecting that the stock has sort of, not artificially, it legitimately fell, but by the value of those dividends. So this is reflecting those dividends through what's known as adjusting for dividends. You might think, why don't we always do that? Just that's not the standard. When you're looking at a stock chart across most platforms, those are when a stock pays a dividend, price goes down, and that's the way it stays. Okay, next up we have our show corporate actions. I actually just showed that. What that does is it adds little icons at the bottom of the chart to give us hints, to show us that there are things like a dividend paid or an earnings announcement. And when we hover over those earnings announcements, we can actually even link to the call for the earnings. We can show something called the CNBC video. So if there happen to be any, probably not, maybe about ConAgra. Let's maybe go back to Apple. Go back to our settings. If I check this box for the CNBC video and click apply, you'll see, yeah, anytime there's a discussion of Apple through a CNBC outlet, there'll be a clip of that video applied, and we can access that using these icons. I'm not going to be showing those clips, but just know that we can display those icons. We can also show options on the chart. Let me do a little bit of cleanup here. Let me take off those corporate actions, click apply, get rid of those icons. Let me also uncheck this box for show volume subgraphs. So what we've already learned is that this allows us to add the volume down here at the bottom. It's found on the equities tab because it's showing the stock's trading volume. Stocks are also commonly referred to as equities. Anyway, we click apply, just a nice clean chart now. If we click to show options and click apply, what this does, it shifts the charts over to the left and it displays a series of little icons for calls and for puts, abbreviated to C and P. Now, for some of you who don't trade options, this isn't going to be terribly valuable. But for others who do, it might be handy to have access to those strike prices right on the chart. Now, right now, I'm only showing 8 strikes. So, in other words, 4 up, 4 down. We could expand that if we wanted to, show maybe 12 strikes. A lot of stocks will have dozens of strike prices. Let me just click 12 so we can see that we just added more. But these show us sort of an intersection. If we look at a given C for a call or a P for a put, those are positioned very specifically according to price and time. So when we look at, let's say, this C right here, that's positioned on 12/19 because it expires on 12/19, and at 2:35 because it's the 2:35 call. Now, if we wanted to trade that, it's actually tradable right from the chart. when we have those options displayed. However, it might be our instinct to just click on it and think that we can trade it by clicking on it. Well, if I click on this, it's actually just going to start accessing whatever my current drawing tool is. I didn't want to make a drawing, but I also don't want to necessarily disable that drawing capability. So instead, to trade using these little icons, we would right click on the icon. So let's say that I wanted to buy that 235 call for the 19th of December. I can right click on that and go to buy. And it's going to create an order. Hold on a second. Let me get, I missed it just marginally. Must be missing it. Let me try again. Anyway, that's interesting. I'm going to have to explore why that might be a glitch on my system. Typically, that would be tradable. It's not allowing me to trade at the moment. Anyway, just experiment on your paper money with exploring a new tool. Let me remove that drawing. In any case, back to our chart settings. Let's not show those options. Let's click apply. It just cleans up the chart. We can also display something known as social sentiment. Let's see, John says, if you're always wanting your chart to go back to the default, why not simply click reset chart to default rather than manually doing it? John, so that's good. The problem with that is it resets every element. So we could, but typically what I'm doing here is I'm demonstrating things as I'm adding one thing and then taking that thing away, but I may not want to make universal changes to everything else. That's why, okay? But let me just check the box for show social sentiment. I'm going to click apply. And this actually shows a tool maybe not a lot of people are familiar with, but what this does is it essentially, through an algorithm, scans social media and looks for references to the stock that we are charting. So it's looking through social media for Apple, and then looking for algorithmic phrases that are either generally considered positive or generally considered negative or possibly just neutral. If we can't assign, a positive or a negative weighting to a specific phrase, it'll just call it neutral. So we see four things on the social sentiment. We see negative mentions displayed as the red area, positive mentions as the green area, just aggregated into a numerical form, neutral as the blue area, and then a ratio of positive to negative. That's our orange line. So if I were to look at, let's say today, I can see if I look at the numbers right here, I can see positive 11,010, negative 5,981. That means 64.8% of positive and negative are actually positive. Or in other words, 64.8% of non-neutral mentions on social media, according to this algorithm, were positive. And then we can follow that sentiment over time. So for example, back here on September 10th, positives were 19,000, negatives were 15,000. It's only 56% positive. So I can see the positive for Apple seemed to be climbing, and what unsurprisingly, typically correlates with stronger performance of stock. Not always. All right. So that social sentiment, interesting feature. On this tool, we've already acquainted ourselves with all of the content field. Down here under the axis field, we can check and uncheck something known as show extended hours trading session. Now, on a daily chart, on a one-year daily chart, we're not actually seeing extended hours. Each candle just represents the trading for opening bell to closing bell. But we know that there's pre-market and aftermarket trading. So sometimes we might be looking at a shorter term chart that includes that pre-market and aftermarket trading. So I'm looking at a 5-day, 15-minute chart here. And on this chart, the white represents the normal hours of trading. The gray represents the rest of trading. That's another 16 and a half hours of trading, either post-market or pre-market. So some traders prefer to be able to see this, others not necessarily. So that can be set up using the equities show extended hours trading session. If I want to just get rid of this gray area, I just uncheck that box. And now it's just showing me, even on a 5-day, 15-minute chart, just the normal trading hours. from one line to the next, we're just seeing those 7.5 hours of trading. Now, if I've activated that, I can highlight the extended hours trading, or I can just blend them in by unhighlighting, just have a nice clean chart. But this would still be a chart showing 24 hours of trading. I'm just going to leave that on its defaults, click apply, and we're going to just quickly acquaint ourselves with the options tab. One more tab. Kadar says, is there a class on how to set up columns in the Market Watch? And their explanation, yes, there is. What you might want to do is go to our channel, look for Market Watch. Okay, just to do a keyword search. In any case, and that'll just bring up related webcasts on that topic. But for options, if we happen to be charting an option, let's go to our trade tab. Let's switch this back to a 1-year chart. Let's also take off the social sentiment. If we were on the trade tab, let's say we went to the 260 call and we wanted to chart that. We can right click on this. We can get more info, including a thinkorswim chart of that option. So this is now a chart of the option, the Apple 17th of October 260 call. And it includes some features on that option, and those are customizable using this options tab. So we can show the open interest, which is let me just click apply. You'll see the green line down here on our volume bars disappears. That's our open interest if we want to track that. We can show the theoretical price, which is our purple line displayed above our candles. We can show extended hours trading, and we can unhighlight that, hide or highlight or unhighlight it, just like with equities. And you might say, well, Cameron, options don't trade in the after hours market. No, most don't, but some do. Some index options like SPX or VIX. So that's it. Beyond that, this is just sort of the same knowledge that we gained from our equities tab now applied to options. So for example, if I don't need to see volume, I don't need to see that volume subgraph. Okay, guys, we have accomplished what I set out to do today. When I kicked things off, I wanted to go through point by point, step by step, the functions and the tools within these 4 tabs: favorite timeframes, appearance, equities, and options. For the futures and Forex traders out there, you're going to see that what we just learned carries over neatly over to those tabs. I don't get deeply into those topics in this series, so I'm not going to go deeply into those tools, but I think this should have been, I think it feels like that there's just about something new for almost anybody, regardless of our experience level with thinkorswim. I think this has been a valuable exploration of the chart settings tools. I hope you agree. But this is what we do with this Wednesday webcast series. We just get acquainted with the tools and features of the thinkorswim desktop platform. So, guys, one quick reminder. I'm going to let you go enjoy the rest of the webcast through the rest of the day. A couple more coming up. But as you do, just make sure that you have access to the full slate of educational offerings from Schwab. Starting with, if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, make sure you do that right now. You can just go down, click on the subscribe button. It only takes a second. It doesn't cost anything, but our channel is where you can join our live streams. You can also look at the recordings of previous webcasts. So you can find the live streams right here. You can find the recordings under the playlist for the different webcast series by clicking on playlists. So as an example, my playlist is the one right down at the very bottom. You can see the full playlist for getting started with thinkorswim. I even had a welcome last week for brand new users of thinkorswim. Now, also want to make sure that if you have an account on X, you should be following your favorite presenters on X. So you can find me on X at Cameron May CS. You can find Brent on X at Brent Moore CS. But if you reply to one of our posts on X, we try to reply right back to you, and it allows for interaction when the camera's not on, which is fabulous. So there's my handle right there. And I just gave an invitation earlier today. Hey, everybody, we have a new coach, Rachel Deshelle, also known as at Rachel-CS. Give her a follow. So great place to connect with your coaches right there on X. Anyway, Thanks everybody for joining me today. We'll explore a different element of Thinkorswim next week. I could see 119 people still watching the live stream, and we've already had how many? 30. Click the thumbs up. That's definitely appreciated. That's like a pat on the back to your presenter. It also gives us a boost in the YouTube algorithm, helps more people find these webcasts and learn things like how to use the chart settings on Thinkorswim. All right. Mike Carval says it just suggests you need to update your picture on the new thumbnails. I think that's coming up here. Yeah, you see that I had a brown beard and now it's gone white. Yeah, when you do this stuff like Brent and I have done now for over 20 years, that's what happens. Anyway, yeah, guys, I'll see you in a future webcast. I'll also look for our next. Brent, thanks for helping out. Whenever I see you again, though, until that moment arrives, I want to wish the very best of luck. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.